Welcome, guys. So for this video, I am going to do the pitcher stats one. This one's a little more simple to do if you want to recreate it on your own. This one I think I'm sending out in the Discord if you guys are in my Discord. So what you do is just go to stats and then the league stats here, and then it'll take you to this page. You go to sortable stats, and I just do a pitching tab with all this stuff in it. This is all the stuff I like to see for the pitching stats and ratings. And then I just export it into my sheet here. And then I just make a few little formulas on my own. One is just to break down which league they're in, the division, all that stuff movement control, and then divided by 3 or whatever. And then just get like kind of a rating of the average of the 3 weighted equally. I know some are more important than the others, like the movement's a touch more important than the other two, but for this thing here, I just do it really kind of pretty equal. And then so for the arms here, I do all of them and then kind of move them over to this page where it just looks a little prettier with the conditional formatting colors. And then I have the slicers on the left to be able to break it down. So just some basic stats league wide from our league, which is kind of neat to look at in my opinion. So you got 426 pitchers that threw innings in the majors this season. And the average age is almost 30 years old. You get 24% of pitchers were lefties. And then, obviously the reverse on that, 76% were righties. 76.1. So in total, I get the count if. So the 102 lefties, 324 righties. So that's why people always talk about it. Pretty obvious, but lefty bats are just so much more valuable because generally almost every player that's a lefty bat is going to be stronger against right-handed pitching. So when 75% of pitchers are right-handed and you're a lefty bat, it just gives you an advantage compared to the other way around like crazy. So because there's way more righty bats than lefty bats in the league. So it's just anytime I talk in other videos about the strength of left-handed batters, it's just pretty obvious why, because there's so many more. But yeah, so you can kind of look at here, and I just really made this whole thing off these 2 rows here, some formulas I did. So I can see some different stuff by being able to move stuff around and with the slicers. So I can see that the league average stuff rating is 51 on the dot. Well, not on the dot, you know what I mean. League average home run against rating is 52, so it's a bit higher. So the movement's actually higher than the stuff and control in this league. But that's pretty good. In my old league, it was way too high. Some of these were like 53, 54. So ratings got a little too inflated over time. But 50 is supposed to be league average. So the fact that they're right about 50 is a good sign that the development and stuff in this league is correct. So we got the movement's a bit higher in everybody. So the average player is going to be like 50 and then 52, 52, 50. You'd see that as a quad 50 on the ratings, but it would actually be a touch higher because of that. The averages are going to be in this column here. And I did an aggregate formula for all these. All that means is then when I hide something, if I just want to look at the AL pitchers, it updates these averages to just show the averages of the ones that are showing, and it doesn't count the hidden ones. The hidden ones are the ones that you filter out. So if I just want to look at the NL, it filters out the AL, and so you can see that like which leagues have the better rated pitchers and stuff, which is kind of neat. So you can see the NL is 50-50. That's right about the averages. So the AL actually has higher rated pitchers. They're a bit higher in stuff and control. So that's kind of interesting. But not saying the AL is better than the NL. It's pretty close. But that's what those aggregate formulas mean if you want to learn about them. So it's just aggregate. And then if you're making the formula from scratch, you can see here, you can do 1 is the average. So the average of like I said, the ones that show. You can do like a count if or a max or a min. So 1 is the average. And then the second number just shows what you want to do. So I choose 5 for ignore hidden rows. And then you just do the area you want to do it in. So that's all that formula is. So you get all that's averages and stuff. The average hold is 52, which is the highest rating actually. The average stamina for guys is 46.9. His averages to the starters and the relievers, stamina's together. And you can see all this other stuff. So where I really like to use, and then what I have over here is the average of the big ratings here. So the highest actual rated pitcher in the game. This isn't 100% correct because technically I didn't make the advanced formulas like I did my draft stuff on this page for the stuff for relievers getting nerfed down, because like if Dolan is 65 stuff because he's a starter, but if he went to the bullpen it'd be 70 or 75. So the stuff for Class A, if he was a starter, would be a lot lower. So his ratings are getting a touch inflated on here, but it's pretty close. So I can just filter out the relievers and starters or whatever. So the highest rated pitcher in the game is actually Taylor Dolan. If you average just them together equally, he's a 65. and then he has about 60 movement with these two averaged together, and then 70 control. So that's averages out to about 62.5. So you can see him and Barriera kind of like the highest rated players in the game, and Keaton wins. So Boston, obviously with the pitching, is just ridiculous. And then you got a couple Tampa Bay guys, a starter and a reliever. And then kind of the other big wigs here, you got Francis Blanco, the star on San Diego's pretty much second or third best pitcher in the game. Mike Riley, and then the new guy for the Yankees they signed. And then some other top guys. Case Williams probably got about as high as anyone there, just a little bit low on the stuff. But yeah, so you can see all that stuff, and then we'll kind of look at the averages for this other stuff here. So the other stuff's pretty straightforward, just the averages for all their ratings. Where what I did above is a little more complicated. This is a some product with subtotals and stuff. So this is a one that I actually had to use ChatGPT for. It's really tricky. It looks ridiculous, but all it's doing is it's saying, like, if you have 5 pitchers stuff, instead of just saying what's the average stuff between those 5, say it's like a 60 stuff guy and a 50 and a 45 and a 50, instead of giving you like a number, it's like, oh, the average between those 5 is 57. What this sum product does is it takes the stat of each individual category, like the BABIP and the slugging and the on-base percentage, and it averages it by per innings pitch. So you're averaging 2 guys. One guy pitched 100 innings, the other guy pitched 50. It's going to take the guy that pitched 100 innings ratings as 66% of it, and the guy that only pitched 50 half of as 33%, if that makes sense. So it's going to weight the average based off the guy's ratings for the innings pitched. So if a really good guy pitched 220 innings and a really shitty rookie reliever pitched 19 innings, it's not just going to take the averages of these 2 guys all these stuff across the board and split it by 2. It's going to averages out to the actual innings pitched. So if that makes sense. So the average salary I have here of all the guys just averaged out is 4.7, but the average salary when they're actually pitching innings is $6 million. So a pitcher is making $6 million per inning, which is extremely high because the top guys are making more money and they're better and they're pitching more innings. So that's why I do the that other formula there, the sum product one. And it's pretty tricky to learn, but all it really does is it takes the 2 category and always does it by the batter space and then divides it by the total batter space. So that's what that formula is doing. So it's really neat. You can kind of see some different things. So you can see the lefties, how they compare to the righties. So as I mentioned, the average pitcher overall made about $6 million, but the average lefty per inning is making 6.2. So lefties are a little bit higher paid. Those are a little bit rare. You can see how rare the top lefties are in their ratings. Like Barriera is a 61 and no one else averages over 58. So those top lefties, and you can kind of see their value there. If you want to see how good they are, so the average lefties FIP is 4.34, and the average righties FIP is 4.31. So the righties are actually a bit better. It's just there's fewer good lefties, so the numbers, they have to play some more innings. Some of those bottom guys aren't as good, but teams want to have a lefty in their bullpen, so get a little bit of push up because of that. So league average batting average is 255 against, and you see all the averages here. League average whip is about 1.3. League average home run 1.1, and then the walks, the league average by the innings pitched is 8.2%, and then the strikeout percentage is 21.8%. The average hits against per 9 is almost exactly 1 per inning. It's 8.9 out of 9 innings. So if you have a pitcher like those top guys, you can see the hits per 9 here. So like they're a full hit per 9 lower, Taylor Dollard. That defense really comes into play with that though. If you see all the guys in the league, you see how ridiculous Carlos Gomez is for Tampa Bay. I'll show you on this screen. Let's see here. Yeah, so guys are hitting 136 off him, 4.2 hits per 9 in 60 innings. The average on base percentage is below 250. It's just absolutely ridiculous BABIP. Actually ridiculous strikeout percentage. Doesn't let up too many home runs, 6 in 60 innings, 1 about every 10 innings. So this guy is just borderline untouchable. It's so funny. This just shows how weird the reliever wars are. Like this guy that's saying is not even worth 1 more, but you can't tell me you get into the playoffs to have a pitcher that dominant and you have him come in the 7th or 8th and 9th inning. It just shows the value of those elite bullpen arms, how much sometimes they can be almost untouchable. So that's pretty neat. And then you got a couple other guys here. So again, I could just want to look at the starters. I would probably say like anyone that pitched over 70 innings. Obviously, some top relievers pitch like 80 or 90 for the sake of this, but I could always fix these. But so you can kind of look at the starters. So no starter in the league really averages over 30% strikeout rate, except for this top guy Crook. He has 80 stuff and only 40 control, so he's going to strike out 31%, but he's going to walk like about 50% more than league average. League average walk rate is about 8. This is at 12.6%, so you can see stuff like that. And then really, I just kind of like looking at all that stuff. You can see some funny stuff here too, like the stolen bases. The guy in Cincy let up 36 stolen base. You can kind of see that and then kind of relate it to their hold rating to see how accurate that is. And it really is. You see all these guys on this list, and no one has really a hold over like till this Hogan guy, 65 hold, but somehow still up 20 stolen bases. I'm sure he pitched a lot of innings, which that would make sense, 160, but or just an outlier year with a catcher with a weak arm or whatever. So you can just see some weird outlier stuff like that. WPA is one I think is very underrated for relievers. So that one here, the relievers usually have. Sorry, I'm just going to fix something. It's bugging me. Format this as a number, and it's going to have 1 decimal. So just instead of saying -1, I'll say -1.0, so it looks a little prettier. Okay, so yeah, you see that I love looking at this stat, the WPA. It just shows the value mainly for relievers in the late innings per appearance rating. So you can just see the kind of, it's like a clutch rating, which is really neat. Yeah, so you can kind of go over your team if you like. So I'll look at my team. Again, I just took over this rebuilding Minnesota team. We're dreadful, so these stats are going to be really ugly. And so if you look at my team, for example, you can see how low my average ratings are. I really only have about 6 pitchers that played a ton of innings that average way below 50 on the stuff moving control, which is not good. And then you can see my the FIP is the kind of the best one overall to look at. You can see I don't really have anyone under 4 FIP. League average is about 4.2. My team was about 4.7, so I was almost half a run more, which is a lot. Over 160 games, you're averaging half a run more, and it's like 80 runs over the course of the season. Worse run prevention than the average. And then, which is about, quite a bit in WAR and wins and losses. But yeah, you can see kind of all your ratings across the board, what you average. So obviously my team has pretty bad control. I average kind of just about league average in the stuff and movement, but the control is quite a bit below. So you can kind of see I go for the stuff a little touch more. I didn't really plan that. It was just kind of the way. My low budget couldn't really afford much. So it's kind of the guys that ended up on my team, some guys there because of their mentals and whatnot, but it's not usually how I build a team. It's just kind of how it happened this year, taking over a team. But yeah, so you can see a lot of that stuff, which is neat. I like to just kind of glance at this and see some fun stuff. What I'd made is one extra stat here. I did the FIP and then the ERA. So you can see who is really unlucky and who's really lucky. So obviously the FIP is kind of more what should have happened based off their peripherals. It's based more off the strikeouts, walks, and home runs. And the ERA is more kind of affected by good or bad defense. So if you have a really low FIP and your ERA is higher, that means you should have performed better, but your defense, probably your luck, let you down. So over the long sample sizes, FIP is a little bit more accurate, but ERA is a better determiner of what actually happened that year. So if you have most guys are pretty equal in both, like the league average is almost dead on. You just see the outliers, like this guy was like the worst pitcher in baseball, Joe Sims. He has 7 FIP, but he actually pitched to a 5.2 ERA. So it means he was even worse than his stats indicate, which makes sense. He had bad ratings, 45 stuff, 45 control. But it's more on the inverse of that. So the guys that got the most unlucky here. So these are the guys that, like this guy had a 3.86 FIP, which is way better than league average. League average is like 4.2. So this guy was the most unlucky pitcher in baseball, Dan Dellinger. So we'll look him up. So I like looking at stuff like this. So this guy, let's see him here. Dan Dellinger, am I blind? Right here. So yeah, you can see why that's accurate. Very good ratings on a bad team that I'm assuming the defense was pretty bad. So yeah, second worst in the AL. So that totally lines up with everything, right? He's a 60 overall, young guy. Looks like pretty much an ace. He's probably a top 10 lefty in the game based off his ratings. He just had terrible luck. He struck out almost 30% of batters, which is way like 8 points above the league average, 8% above the league average. The walks were below league average. The average in the league was 8.2, I think we said. He walked only 6.6%. And the home runs, that's the only thing that kind of, he only let up 7 though in 47 innings, but that's just a touch below the league average. League average about 1.1. So the home runs were pretty much just about a bit worse, but then the walk and so the stuff that the FIP really goes by these 3 categories for the most part. And so the FIP is saying he should be like a top 100 out of the 400 pitchers in the league kind of thing. He ended up being, the ERA was 6.5, so it's just crazy. So he had a minus 1.3 RWAR because RWAR goes by ERA, and FWAR is the main WAR the game uses, goes by FWAR, which is the FIP WAR. So that actually says he has a positive WAR based off his FIP, but the RWAR says he was well negative and one of the worst pitchers in the game. So you can tell that's why I think it's a little bit more powerful to look at FWAR and FIP over ERA. Not for award voting and stuff, because when it comes to that, you want to say like how they actually do that. You're voting off the previous year, but when you're identifying a talent, if you were a GM that just looks at RWAR and ERA, you'd be like, oh, this guy was terrible. He's good ratings, but he doesn't play well. But there's a lot more to the story. If that happened 2 or 3 years in a row, you'd start to look deeper and be like, well, maybe he's one of those guys that just doesn't play well. But I bet you if you throw him on a top 10 defense, and all of a sudden he's going to have like a 4 WAR season. So stuff like that is kind of stuff you can pull out from using spreadsheets and stuff, which is neat. And you could just see some other examples of this. Another really good example. Let's see here. This looks like a great example here. So Ben Taylor on Atlanta is another one. Let's see him. So Ben Taylor has not really, I would say, well above average ratings, but pretty decent, like 55 stuff, 50 movement, 45 control, kind of league average. But again, he had a really good FIP. So he really, because he didn't let home runs, is what's really helping that FIP. So 70 innings, only let 5 home runs. So he strikes out a bit better than league average. The walks are actually a little bit below, but the defense is really bad. So he's not letting up home runs, and he's striking out quite a bit of guys. The walks, it's not even like they're that much worse, like 10% compared to 8. It's not really much. It's just the defense behind him is really bad. He's letting up 9.3 hits per 9. And again, just having some bad luck. So guys are only hitting, like, they're hitting 266 often, which isn't too bad. League average 255. So it's actually worse than league average. But again, by his ratings, it should be a little bit better than that. So you see a guy like that, again, positive FWAR 1.1, but because of the ERA being so high, so the RWAR, the ERA WAR is going to be negative. Baseball Reference uses that. So you just see things like that. So you'd like, oh, that guy's actually a pretty good pitcher, had a bad year. So maybe that GM, it's actually my buddy there that just took over that team. He just took over like this yesterday. But you'd see something like that and be like, oh, that might be a guy targeted in trade. Maybe that GM wouldn't value him as high as his talent level indicates because he played bad, and that GM would, value the ERA over the FIP or something like that. So everyone kind of like treats their team a little differently. But anyways, nothing groundbreaking here, but just some fun stuff to talk about that I enjoy. I'm sure many of you guys might find this super nerdy, but I'm sure if you're here in the video still, the end here, you kind of find it interesting like I do. So yeah, I think I posted the draft one in this Discord. I will post the team one next. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about by the Discord, in the comments, just write the word Discord and I'll send you the link to join. I just made a little Discord for some out of the park friends and stuff to just chat about some nerdy stuff if you're interested. Anyways, that's it for this episode. See ya.